Hey everyone, welcome to How to Make Dinner. Today we're making dinner a la Ottolenghi. I'm super excited. I just got this book. And you know, everyone's losing their minds over it. So let's see what it's all about. Today we're making this recipe. It's on page 137. It is Israeli couscous and squash in tomato and star anise sauce, which I'm pretty pumped up about. It was really hard to decide what recipe to do. Basically, there's a lot of good stuff in there, but this one had enough stuff that I already had on hand, and I only had to buy a few additional items to make it, so I thought it would be a good one. So to make this recipe, I have a butternut squash. In the recipe, it says to use a half, but then what I love about Ottolenghi's recipes is they always have weights as well as like the cup amounts. So when I actually weighed it, it was closer to a full squash. I've got some onions two ways. I have diced onions and I also have some centimeter sliced rounds. I also have a bunch of baby spinach. This is a whole bag, 250 grams. I have some garlic hiding in here. And I have some star anise. Star anise is a cool one and I don't use it often enough. I have it in my cupboard. I just don't use it very often, so I was drawn to that. I also have some fresh cilantro, some Roma tomatoes, and some Israeli couscous. So this stuff, I actually am not a huge fan of regular couscous. I find it just kind of like, I don't love the texture. Maybe I need somebody to cook it for me that really knows what they're doing, but I love Israeli couscous because it's just like little pearls. And actually, in my store, it was called pearl couscous, not Israeli couscous. And I also have a few spices, so some cinnamon and some chili flakes and olive oil and all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's get started. First thing it says is to preheat the oven to 475, line 2 baking sheets with parchment paper. I've done all that. Toss the squash with 1 teaspoon of the cinnamon, 1/4 of the garlic, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, salt, and grinded pepper. Then spread it out on the baking sheets. So, okay, and the squash, it says to leave the skin on, take the seeds out, and cut into 2 centimeter wedges and then halved crosswise. What do you figure that means? 2 centimeter, so wedges I think are like this. So I'm gonna do that, I guess. And then in half crosswise, maybe that means like this way? That's what we're gonna do. And this is one of the few recipes in the book that doesn't have a corresponding photo. That's definitely more than 2 centimeters at the thickest part, but we're gonna do our best. And then halved crosswise. So I'm gonna go like this way. Let's go with that. I'm just gonna chuck these all in a bowl. Literally chuck. Pretty much everything else is chopped already, so you don't need to worry about me boring you with my chopping. Okay, so in with the squash is, what did it say? A teaspoon of cinnamon. I love cinnamon and squash. And I kind of love that there's a whole teaspoon in here. It's like really leaning in, like this is gonna be cinnamon forward. And then olive oil, 2 tablespoons. I'm not gonna measure that. 1, 2. 3/4 teaspoon of salt. This is like the half eyeball when you have a measuring spoon, but it's not the right size. So you just fill it to like the degree that you think it is about right. So 3/4 teaspoon is a not quite full teaspoon. And then 1/4 of the garlic. I'm gonna eyeball that. The garlic has been smashed / slightly chopped. I'm a little bit worried about this garlic burning because it's not fine. It's just smashed like the recipe says. And actually some of these, okay, so I should have cut the squash in half widthwise first and then into wedges, because as you can see, there's a big discrepancy between the thickness of the bulb part and the thickness of this part. So actually, if I'm being sensible, I'll probably go back and cut some of these in half. Spreading these out, and I'm throwing these in the oven. It's already at 475. Okay, meanwhile, place the onion rounds, keeping them intact, on the second prepared sheet and drizzle with 1.5 teaspoons of olive oil. Okay. Let's bring this guy up here. 1.5 teaspoons. What do you reckon? I'll use my finger to slow down the flow here because I could get a little crazy. There, I think that's about right. And then sprinkle with 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. Kind of like that, adding a little sugar to help bring the sweetness out of the onions. And a pinch of salt and pepper. These onions are gonna go in the oven along with the squash, but they only take 18 minutes. So I'm gonna just put them aside for now. So far this has been pretty easy and smooth. I'm into it. Okay, while the vegetables are roasting, put 3 tablespoons of olive oil in a large saute pan for which you have a lid. 3 tablespoons, so 2, 3, that's quite a bit, I like it. Add the chopped onion and the star anise and cook for about 8 minutes. In a few minutes, I'm gonna add the garlic and some spices, and it also says to add grated plum tomatoes with the skin discarded. So I haven't done this in a while, but I'm pretty sure I remember something about, sorry, I keep moving that. I'm pretty sure I remember something about being able to just grate tomatoes and the skin will just kind of stay behind if you kind of do it flesh side forward. Let's see if my memory doesn't deceive me. Yeah, it's happening. So yeah, if you just cut it in half and then just grate the flesh, the skin just kind of gets left behind automatically. I got my tomato flesh all grated here. And yeah, it's a bit of a process. It's fine though. And these onions are very soft and a little bit brown. So I'm gonna chuck everything else in here. So add the remaining garlic, sure, and cinnamon. That smells very nice. Add the chili flakes. The tomatoes and the tomato paste. One tablespoon. I love buying tomato paste in a tube. It's just easy. Now I've got, you know, another tablespoon whenever I need it at my disposal. Okay, so what happens next? Oh, more sugar. More salt. Okay, and then I'm just supposed to cook this for a little while, like another 8 minutes, and then add a bunch of water and let it cook down. I'm gonna say it's been 8 minutes, even though I think that's a bit of a lie. But things are thickening up nicely in here. So I'm supposed to add the water, add some of the water, 2 cups. And then I'm just gonna simmer this for half an hour. So we've been simmering the sauce down for about half an hour. It's nice and thick, as you can see, real thick. The sauce looks just divine. And I've pulled the onions and the squash out of the oven. Those are just standing by. And now I'm taking out a good chunk of this sauce, putting it aside. Probably gonna need a different spoon. And into this pan, I still have a little bit of sauce. I still have the star anise in there. And I'm supposed to keep that stuff warm, but I'm kind of not gonna worry about that too much. Meanwhile, I'm going to add the couscous into this pan, I believe. And this is 250 grams of couscous. I'm gonna mix it well. It's funny because I don't follow recipes very often. So doing it on camera is even funnier. But I wanted to do this because I think it's really helpful to know what you're getting into when you buy a cookbook. And also there used to be a show on Canadian television called Anna and Christina's Grocery Bags. And they did cookbook reviews and they would just make a whole feast from one cookbook. And I loved that show. I would love to see Anna and Christina doing their thing again on YouTube. If you two are watching, big fan over here. Okay, so and then I'm gonna add the rest of the water. A little bit of salt. Bring it to a boil. Oopsie, shouldn't take long to bring to a boil. I just want to make sure all the little couscouses are in the liquid. My book is covered in splatters already, but I think that's what's supposed to happen. Books aren't supposed to look pretty on the shelf, right? They're supposed to get used. Well, I don't know who's to say what's supposed to happen, but I prefer my books to get well worn. Okay, I'm going to reduce the heat here. And I'm going to cover this and I'm going to let it cook for another 30 minutes or until all the liquid is absorbed. So here we go. More waiting. While we're waiting for this to cook, I did make another recipe from this cookbook earlier today, and it was where is it now? The curry crusted rutabaga steaks. I didn't quite make them properly, but they were still really, really delicious. All it is a couple of rutabagas peeled and sliced really thickly, like an inch thick. And then there's this marinade that you make by grinding up fenugreek seeds and turmeric and oil and garlic. And then you just kind of slather that all over the steaks, if you will. And then you just roast them in the oven covered with foil. And rutabaga is also known as swede. I'm surprised actually it's not called swede in this book because Yotam Ottolenghi lives in London and they call it swede there. Anyway, it's kind of just turnip. It's like a big giant turnip. So I'm sure you could do the same exact thing with turnips, but you cook them for like an hour and 20 minutes in this really nice marinade and they get super tender and very sweet. So I loved those. And then I was supposed to make a little salad that went along with it. I just put a little bit of cilantro and I stirred some of the marinade together with some plain yogurt. The one mistake I made with that recipe though was it said to grind the fenugreek seeds in a small food processor or a spice grinder. And I guess my food processor isn't strong enough to grind fenugreek seeds. So they were left quite coarse. Like they're basically just whole seeds. So if I were to do it again, I would definitely grind them ahead of time in a spice grinder or actually just use my mortar and pestle because I have one. So I wish I'd done that, but it was still really, really nice and I'll definitely make it again. Actually, I feel like that might become a staple this fall because it's like rutabagas are so cheap and totally underutilized. I kind of feel like I should do a whole video devoted to rutabagas. So that curry crusted rutabaga steaks recipe is on page 63 and it's definitely a winner. I can't wait to make it again properly this time. Actually, I can show you. Should I just bust out a quick fork right now. Oh, so tender. Really nice. They're like melty. Mmm. I have let this couscous absorb on medium heat for, I'm gonna say that's been about 20 minutes. It says half an hour, but I was getting a little bit worried, and rightfully so, because I started to get a little bit too much of a crust forming on the bottom. And I mean, a little bit of crust is good, but I'm pretty sure it was ready to burn. So I don't know if my burner is just a little bit too hot, which I'm pretty sure is the case. But I'm just gonna see if these guys are done. I think they're done. They've got kind of like a nice al dente-ish kind of like bounciness to them. But just to be sure, I'm gonna add a little bit more water here and crank up the heat a little bit more and just give it one final round with the lid on just to kind of finish it off. And then I'll just get everything else together and we'll assemble it. The couscous looks really nice and glossy, and it's absorbed all of the sauce. It did do a lot of sticking to the bottom, but I think that's because of the pan that I'm using. I removed the star anise so that nobody chomps into them. And all that's left is just to layer it up with all this delicious stuff. So I've got the reserved sauce. I'll just do a couple spoonfuls of that. I tasted this sauce on its own. It's so delicious, by the way. And then we'll just kind of lay some pieces of squash. And then a few of the onions. I don't know if I'm supposed to leave these whole. I'm just gonna kind of separate them. And then some spinach. And this is the sauteed spinach that was mixed with a little bit of cilantro. I'm just gonna kind of blob it around. This looks good. So I'd love to know if you guys would like to see more of these kinds of videos where I'm testing recipes from cookbooks or other blogs. I did it one other time with the Hungarian mushroom soup from the Modern Proper blog. It's really fun, and it means that you don't have to test them. It's like I'm doing the work for you, right? So if you have any suggestions of recipes you'd like me to try or cookbooks you'd like me to cook from, let me know in the comments or over on the gram or pretty much anywhere. I'm around. I'm a big fan of this piled up thing we've got going on here. And then I'm just gonna chop it with a little olive oil. C'est fini. So there you have it. That's our Israeli couscous and squash in tomato and star anise sauce. I'm really excited to eat it. Ooh. That cinnamon. Oh my God, that is a very nice fall thing. Okay, there are a lot of steps involved, but I do think it's worth it. This is delicious. I'm really excited to make more from this book. We're gonna go eat now. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you like this episode. We'll see you next week when we'll be making something else.